But one of the other questions that arises from that match is Niko Sigur and the future that he has in this team. A question from Paul Von Anderson: is Niko Sigur forcing his way into the first choice starting 11 with this group? Or maybe does there have to be a formation shift with the Canadian team to get Sigur within this group? Maybe that is dropping a striker to allow Sigur to get back into the midfield or even play as a wing back or some sort of adjustment. But Brendan, where do you see Sigur fitting into this group? Is he forcing his way into a starting spot?
I mean, he's definitely forcing his way into what I would call Canada's best 11, but that doesn't mean that he fits into what is the best starting 11 that Jesse Marsch has available. What's amazing is that you can use him at right back and get, I think, you can have the same expectations as you would to have him in his natural defensive midfield position. And there are not too many players in the game where you can say that. And that puts him, to me, in Alphonso Davies territory, where this is clearly a forward that you can get max efficiency out of in a different position at fullback. And not too many guys can walk around with that tag. So I think that's important. I'm very interested to see what happens with Niko Sigur this year. Obviously, Gennaro Gattuso, his head coach at Hajduk Split, has left. There's been a lot of clubs and people interested in Niko Sigur over the last year as well. I wouldn't be surprised if we're either talking about a big contract extension that he signed, similar to Promise David, or another club coming in for him in the next few weeks. I really, really like Niko Sigur's game, and I think he's developing into a very important player. So I struggle to see him topping the other players in those positions. You know, I still want Alistair Johnson to be healthy there, right back, but I feel pretty comfortable from just two major samples here to say that Niko Sigur's a damn good equivalent at right back.
I think also what we're learning, why this is such an interesting discussion, is like Niko Sigur is a mentality monster. We haven't really heard a lot from Niko Sigur, since he's committed to Canada. He's kind of been in the background. At least I hadn't heard from him. This camp, we heard a lot from him because, of course, it was his hometown game. We requested him last week to speak to him in a scrum. Then Josh Cloak did a great feature on him. Shout out to friend of the show for that. And then we hear from Sigur after the game. And you realize, this kid, he has a certain drive. And one thing that stood out in Cloak's future was just talking about how detail-oriented he is, just how much of of almost this footy nerd he is growing up. His dad, the way they would watch the game, he'd be there in U12 soccer and he'd be, basically be a captain out there telling his teammates not to be a hero, to play simple football. But you see it when he plays, he just plays the game in such a simple, effective way, but he does it at an elite level. And that's what always separates the pros, right? The top pros, they're not going to go out there and dribble through 8 guys. No, they just always make the right decisions. And Sigur strikes me as that guy. But then you hear him talk and you can see why. His mentality is so elite. And there's just something about that driven nature of it where that competitive spark too, where he's just on the field and he wants to win so bad, that I think that's going to be the big reason why it's so hard to keep him out. Because if you're Jesse Marsch, he's the kind of player you want in the pitch in a World Cup match. Because he's not going to wilt in front of the occasion. He seems unafraid of it, but also he just has the intelligence, the understanding to go out and read the game. It's that kind of, Croatian IQ in a sense too, right? We've seen it with those Croatian teams where they're so dominant, but for their dominance, it's the savviness, right? It's the Modric's just doing their thing at a quietly elite level. And I love that he's picked up that skill playing at Hajduk Split. And I think that's what's going to be the hardest part for Marsch to keep him out, because you need players like that.
As soon as Gattuso left, that's what I was most upset about. Because we haven't been talking about Sigur as a player that is hot in the transfer market this year, right? And so when Gattuso stepped down, I thought, damn it, Sigur's losing such a valuable person to learn from. And I'm just glad that he's not also eligible to play for the Italian national team, and we don't have to worry about that.